Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampirism, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, I'm Irene and Mark, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And with me tonight is my lovely co-host, as usual, Mark Johnson.
I am quite lovely.
You are lovely.
I'm a lovely human being.
Yeah, that's what you think. Okay. Yes, you are. Yes. And I'm a liar.
Well,
so, Mark.
So, Irene, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm putting up my Christmas decorations tomorrow, and we're lighting up the drive.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
No, lighting up the drive at the weekend. And children.
Well, I have the house mostly decorated, and we're getting the tree sometime this week. So we'll have everything nicely decorated for Christmas.
Well, I've got half of it up, but Gertie keeps on pinching everything.
Uh-oh.
She ran off earlier on with a Father Christmas. And it was one of these ones that make rude noises. So as she ran off into the kitchen with this thing in her mouth, it was making rude noises all the way. And you couldn't tell which one it was making the rude noises. Was it Gertie or was it the Father Christmas? But one of them was making the rude noises. Anyway, getting off of that, I must tell people that, again, I still haven't got an office. So Gertie's snoring over on the sofa, and Pickles Pee-wee, the Pope, is in his cage looking at me daggers because I've got grapes on my desk.
And you can't just, plop one in his direction every now and then?
Pluck one in his direction.
Plop one, like throw one in his direction.
Yeah, I'll plop one in his direction. I'll pluck him as well if it carries on. But I just want to apologise for any noise in the background that does sound a bit demonic. It is obviously Pickles Pee-wee screaming for a grape. Okay? Right, what have you been up to, Mark?
Busy. Doing construction on the house. Sitting here in the cold. My heater blew. And now I'm waiting. I have to wait till Monday for them to come and install a new boiler for my heater. And yes, it's going to cost. Yeah, don't let your heater blow, guys. But occasionally you just can't help it when you're a homeowner.
Whenever these things blow, they always blow when you need them in the winter.
Well, it's not like you're running them during the summer. So
no,
you
but they always pack up in the winter.
Yeah, this one. Well, it's 20 years old. I mean, it's original to the house. There's a few things original to the house that, over the next year or two are going to need attention. And we knew this one was coming, and it finally hit. So, yeah, it's just one of those things in life you have to deal with.
Yeah, well, you can still make use of it. Garden ornament, maybe?
Yeah, or take it out for target practice. Take it in the woods and shoot at it. I knew people used to at old shooting ranges. People used to bring out like refrigerators and washing machines and things like that to use it for target practice.
Yeah, but you can still make very good garden ornaments out of a lot of these things. I've got a Belfast sink in the garden that's growing alpines.
I bet your Belfast sink looks a lot more attractive than my, oil furnace boiler.
I was thinking of actually bringing it indoors. Have you seen the price of Belfast sinks nowadays? They cost an absolute arm and a leg. And there I've got one out in the garden, full up with dirt, grown a few plants in it, and half of them are weeds.
Well, so you're unique.
Yeah, no, I'm always unique, yeah.
I bet the manufacturers never thought that somebody would be using it for that purpose.
Do you know, when we bought our house in London, there was in the back garden, as an ornament, a pedestal sink on the lawn and a toilet, and with plants growing out of it.
Well, it's got natural compost, so it's got the right, minerals and bacteria and everything to grow healthy plants.
It had plants growing out. I'm not kidding you. And, it just couldn't stay there. It just really couldn't stay there. I'd never seen anything like it. A pedestal sink, and all we needed was the bath, and we would have had the full bathroom suite.
Well, it's like the cows that are behind your house. Notice whenever they plop, the grass grows taller.
I tell you what, when they plop, because I'm in a valley, so when they plop, the noise carries. At night time, it carries right across. You can hear a cow having a wee half a mile away.
So basically, you have one giant loo in your backyard. In your back garden, I should say.
Well, that's what comes of living back, very close to a farm, isn't it? You have to just put up with it. All right. So what are we doing then, Mark?
Well, I just wanted to throw a shout out to our new listeners, people who've been tuning in. We've been getting a lot of nice comments lately. People have been giving us some very lovely feedback, not only here on our show, but on our other shows that broadcast here on our network, the Paranormal UK radio network. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening, and we're glad everyone is enjoying our little endeavor here.
Yeah, we're getting some very nice comments. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
And you all have a nice Christmas. Carry on giving us the comments. We like it.
Now we will tell
like
everybody we will have shows for the next 3 weeks, but the week of Christmas and New Year's, those 2 weeks we will be taking off because of the holidays.
Well, are we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
I'm glad somebody told me.
Well, you and I have been sitting here making the schedule.
I'd be sitting here with headphones on, wouldn't I?
Yeah. We've only been making the schedule the last couple of weeks for the going into next year.
You're
so
doing all that.
Yeah. So, and yes, we should also mention the roles, the change up in roles that we've had here at the.
Oh yeah, and the fact that we ranked.
Yes,
everybody, we ranked. Go on.
We ranked 14 on what was that? It was
I don't know,
on Stitcher Radio.
World's best
World's best podcast. We ranked 14.
World's best international radio shows. We
Yes.
beat BBC,
Wow.
CBS, and shows like that. Absolutely fantastic. That was yesterday. We ranked 14. Where we're ranking at the moment, I'm not sure.
No. But we
that's
also
all down to the amount of listeners.
we also want to throw out that we the help that we have with the station now. We have our friend Annie Mercer, who works with the station, who's helping as producer and is helping to produce several of the shows. And we have a new addition, Tim Kelly, who has come on as production manager, and he's assisting me with scheduling programming and getting all the daily shows all mixed and ready to go every day.
That's it. Yeah. And plus, we got 2 new shows coming very, very soon.
Very, very soon.
And more British shows, which I'm pleased about.
Yep.
Maybe 3.
3. The more British shows, the better.
Yeah.
Well, we are a British network.
That's it. We are.
That's right. And people complain when I use the fake British accent, so I'll stop. But I sound more sophisticated.
You do.
I do.
You do.
Yes.
Yes.
Jolly good.
And you're not going to be around, are you?
Well, I'm waiting to see. I may not be around for the next couple of shows, so Andy may be subbing in for me. It depends, unfortunately, day jobs interfere, and I may have to go work on site for the next couple of weeks. So if I do, I'll have to take those weeks off, and Andy Mercer will be sitting in for me as co-host.
Yeah, he'll be covering for you.
Yeah.
And keeping me under control.
God help him.
Yeah, well, he is one of my producers.
Especially if you wear the ring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you wear the ring. You're totally incorrigible.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, then let's get on with the show.
Oh, let's get on with the show then. So our guest for tonight is an author and paranormal investigator and experiencer who lives in Pembrokeshire. I'm sorry. English names always throw me off. Pembrokeshire, West Wales. Is the author
Pembrokeshire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you trying to say some American words. I love it.
Yeah.
So in Pembrokeshire, West Wales, and is the author of A Most Haunted House, Ghost Sex the Violation, and his new book, Haunted, Horror of Haverfordshire. Oh, God, I'm doing it again. Haverford West, yes. That's the problem. I need to say this with a British accent, then I'll get through them. Okay. So Haverford West.
All right, start again. Say it with a British accent. Let's have a laugh.
Okay. So we'd like to welcome our guest, GL Davies, to the program. How are you tonight, GL?
Hello, that was a fantastic introduction. You gave it your best shot. And
I failed miserably.
No, you know what? That was the best effort I've heard. I've been doing the media rounds all week, and so far, you're winning the award for the American who's given it the best go at pronouncing Haverford West. Even I struggle, because when you want to say, the book title is Haunted, Horror of Haverford West. It's like a tongue twister. If you say it very quickly, it's a nightmare, especially if you don't know how to pronounce Haverford West. But thank you for having me on the show. Thank you so much.
Gavin, it is certainly a tongue twister to him, isn't it? I'm going to get him saying it all the time tomorrow, just to drive him crazy.
I'm going to walk around saying Pembrokeshire.
Pembrokeshire.
Yeah. And of course, Gavin is a neighbour of mine. He's in the next county across. So we'll have to meet up sometime, Gavin, and have coffee.
I would like that very much. I'm often in Carmarthen, beautiful town, often in Carmarthen, and Swansea, which is a bit further for you. And also, the invitation extends to you. If you're ever in Haverfordwest, give me a shout and I will take you for lunch. We can have a good old chat about paranormal and your experiences in Wales. And same for you, Mark. If you're ever in Haverfordwest for some unbeknownst reason, then please give me a shout as well. I'll buy you lunch as well.
If I ever get a chance to come across the pond, most certainly.
Well, West Wales is a great place to start because just of all the history, all the castles, forts, there's so much in just West Wales. And I think Irene can contest about that. There's so much history, so much here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know. I love making him jealous over that.
Oh, yeah. She visits Cloneffy Castle with her family.
Clonstefan
Castle. My bad.
Good effort, Mark. You good one. But the thing is, right, we've got like castles and things like that.
We've
got Native American Indians and you've got Yetis. And, I'd rather have those.
Gavin, you cannot stretch your arms out without touching castle walls in Wales, can you?
Exactly. Where I live in Pembrokeshire was called Little England, and the south of the county was fortified, and all the Welsh culture was practically was removed. And it is wall to wall with castles and keeps and forts and churches and just so much history.
And absolute perfect, beautiful beaches that knock the spots off of any of the beaches abroad.
White Sands was in the top 10 beaches in the world, Yeah, and that was competing with some of the beautiful coastline in America and Africa and Southeast Asia. And we've got 58 beautiful beaches in Pembrokeshire. We've got the Preseli Hills, which have been downgraded from mountains, unfortunately, but they're now hills. They're still very beautiful. And just wall to wall of history. So, Mark, save up, come over here. You can stay with me, you can stay with Irene. We'll look after you. You can tell us about Yetis.
Well, I don't know about Yetis, but I do know about Sasquatch/Bigfoot.
Fair enough.
Yetis are in the Himalayas, just like Yowies are in Australia. And we have Bigfoot, Sasquatch here in the U.S. Actually, up here by me, I have one just a couple of miles from me. He's known as Big Red Eye.
Have you seen it?
No, but he's been reported here from time to time. People have seen Bigfoots around this area. I have a friend who lives up just a few miles on the other. I'm up near New York State, and where New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey all come together, that triangle up there. And I have a friend living up there who's been dealing with Bigfoot activity since he moved into his house about a year ago.
Good grief. And you've also got the Jersey Devil in your state as well. Is that correct?
Well, that's what they say. That's one of the few that I'm really doubtful on.
Really, that's Mark in disguise.
Yeah. That's me after a bad drunk. Stammering around the Pine Barrens. Well,
I've got a nice little segue for you and your amazing listeners, at Paranormal UK Radio. And you're saying about Bigfoot. And last week, I was very proud to launch a brand new free e-magazine. Okay, there's no sign up, no subscription, no download. It's 125 pages of wall-to-wall paranormal articles from some of the best writers, broadcasters, podcasters on the planet. And it's 100% free because I believe in a world of sharing knowledge. Excuse me. And that's why I love your show, because that's what you're doing. You're giving platforms to people like me. You're sharing knowledge to people all over the world. So head over to theparanormalchronicles.com. And on the left-hand side, it says magazine, or you can just go to theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine, or just get in touch with me through Facebook and I'll send you a link, okay? And it's got amazing articles like life after death, haunted chairs, past life, UFO pictures, more about the ghost sex, the science of spectrophilia. But there's an amazing article, I think Mark will enjoy this, and it's called, Is Bigfoot an Alien? And this gentleman has done proper lifetime research into the fact that Bigfoot might be an alien probe.
Now, we've discussed that fact before now.
Yeah, and he goes into depth of things like there's all these creatures on the planet that technically shouldn't be here, and that they might be alien. I know he said anal probes. I mean alien probes. And then there's also an article about why we are so compelled to search for Bigfoot as well. What is so compelling about it? Is it because they are cousins to us? Are they the missing link? Are they a superior being to us? Because I think when we think of Bigfoot, we look at it as a primitive animal. But from what I know, and again, you and Mark can probably add a bit too much more to this, they're very, very attuned with nature and spirituality. They appear to have their own language. They have their own customs. They might have abilities we don't have, like a natural ability to camouflage or disappear, travel vast distances at small amounts of times. And it's a fascinating subject. And we don't really have anything like that in Wales, do we, Irene? We've got our big...
We do. We have the Tremel.
Yes, and local too, as a matter of fact. The Tremor.
It was originally spotted in Snowdon, wasn't it? It was a hairy man sort of thing called the Tremel.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I did not know about that.
And what was it up in Scotland? The Willowoos?
Willowoos.
Willowoos, yes. Plus, you have all the old...
And in Europe, there's quite a few accounts as well.
Is it the Almas in Russia?
Yeah, going all over Europe. I think every country has some sort of Bigfoot. Yeah, cryptid Bigfoot type creature. Yeah?
Most every country.
Maybe the Neanderthals didn't fully die out, and maybe they continued to survive.
Well, maybe they're extra dimensional.
Extra dimensional.
She says, with a grape in her mouth.
Well, Bigfoot's definitely something that we love to talk about. I've never seen one. Always look for them. And just like UFOs and ghosts, and that's what we're going to talk about today, which is your latest book, which I guess is a sequel to your earlier book, The Haunted Horror of Haverford West.
Excellent. Really well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I take my bows.
Yes.
And that was the sequel to A Most Haunted House. So basically... tell us a little bit on that, on your background, how you got to write these books, and about your experiences with it. What drove you to this?
Thank you. Yes, right. With Haunted Horror of Haverford West, okay, it's actually a pre-sequel. I don't even know if that's the proper word, but it's a pre-sequel, and it's a sequel to my first book, A Most Haunted House, but it's before A Most Haunted House. Now, people out there probably think, I've never heard of a most haunted house. So that's fine. You don't have to buy it because there's a brand new edit included in Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire. So the story begins for me in 2002. Me and my then girlfriend, we bought a house, and it was typical blissful beginnings. It was in Haverfordshire, and we had had a very good relationship, and we moved to this house. We bought a house, and within 3 months, we were done. And it left me severely depressed with a litany of mental health issues. I was an alcoholic, and I kind of cascaded into a 10-year abyss. And part of my coping mechanism was to write about my experience there. So I wrote a book called The Most Haunted House. I'm profoundly dyslexic. I didn't have a publisher and editor. It was written as a form of catharsis. And I'd sobered up. I'd stopped drinking. I've been sober 6 years now. And, you know, I'm an advocate for mental health and the connection between the paranormal and mental health. Mm-hmm. So whilst at a Carmarthen train station, I started writing this book, this story. And I kind of distanced myself from it by looking at the people and recanting what had happened to us. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, what are you writing?" I said, "This. Oh, can I read it?" She read it and she was terrified. She said, "Oh my God, that's the scariest thing I've ever read." So I put it on Kindle and just forgot about it. And it went on to sell 60,000 copies. And it became this kind of example of a real breakup in a relationship and a mental state while there was a haunting. And it was great because people could decide whether it was the haunting that caused the breakup or was it just a psychological issue. Okay, there was nothing sensationalized about it. It was presented as an interview. There was nothing sensationalized. There's no spinning heads, no Indian burial ground in the cellar, nothing like that. It was just raw about emotion and how a haunting can affect you. Mm-hmm. So that did really well. And then in 2015, Take a Break, Fate and Fortune got in touch with me and said, "Look, we want to know more about this book." So I told them, "Look, it's me. I was the guy in the book. That was my girlfriend. It was my story." And they're like, "Wow!" And they
Anne and Di in this book is you.
No, John and Sarah. I'm John. So
John and Sarah.
So there's in Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire, it's broken into 3 sections. Okay, the first one is Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire, which is people who lived in the same house as me from 1989 to 1991. Mm-hmm. Then immediately following that in the book, you've got a new edit of A Most Haunted House, which was my experience in 2002. And then finally, you've got a summary of explanations. So I've looked into everything that could cause the haunting, from gas to mobile phone signals or cell signals, as you call them in America, to psychological reasons, to time travel, to dimensional beings, you name it, the whole spectrum. So anyone can read the book and have something to think about at the end, okay? So I had believed my experiences at the house had been caused due to depression and a new mobile phone carrier, okay, called Tetra.
Yeah.
And in The Most Haunted House, it was a ghastly experience for the people who lived here. It wasn't just me and my then girlfriend. It affected our next door neighbour, and it affected family and friends who came to stay at the house.
So it could well have been the mask.
And I was happy to accept that. But the people that
lived there before you, they also die and
yeah, this is what happened, you see.
And that was before the mask was put up, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that ruined me because I had come to terms. I was very comfortable. I'm not, I'm not like a diehard skeptic, but at the same time, I'm not wide open as a barn door believer. I'm in the middle. I want to believe, but I want to believe in something solid as opposed to just saying, yeah, that was a ghost when it was the pipes. Yeah, that was a ghost when it was a dream, you know. So the article got published in a magazine. And I was very comfortable that it was the mask, the phone technology, and my psychological maladies that caused everything. And it was affecting all of us, okay? And then I got an email, and it's from a woman claiming not only did she know the streets, but she knew the actual house, right? Now, I'm not allowed to reveal the house because it's not my house. And they want to sell it, they want to rent it, okay? And she identified the house and then proved she lived there between 1989 and 91. I met up with them, and their story, without hyperbolic kind of like promotion, and is possibly
these are the characters, Diane Ann in the book. Yeah,
they're real people. They live in Pembrokeshire. They're in their 50s now. They're really nice people.
Mm-hmm.
They contacted me because they had lived with the events for 30 years, and they felt the need to have their catharsis, to unburden their story, to make sense of it. They didn't want any money for it, but at the same time, they didn't want it sensationalized. They didn't want to be on this morning, sat on the couch. They didn't want to be in the mirror or whatever. So I went down, and they're lovely people, and they've got a family, and they told me about their events from 1989 to 1991, and it was surreal beyond belief and terrifying. And I am blessed that my experience wasn't half of what they experienced, because if it had been, I wouldn't be here now. Because it was so.
I've got to admit, Gavin, because we brought you on the show early, I haven't had time to complete the book, and neither has Mark.
That's fine.
But the bit about the pet cemetery, oh my God, that was enough. Oh Christ, I had to skip it. I had to skip a couple of bits of that because I just couldn't cope with it.
What I do is, when I interview people, whether it was for Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire, or if it was Ghost Sex Violation, or if it's just general people telling me of events, is I'll interview them many different ways, and I'll cross-examine them, I'll interview them together, separate, because I want to get to the crux of the story. And rather than just...
Well, I tell you, it's such an interesting book.
Thank you so much.
It really is such an interesting book. You know, but that little bit, I got so upset. And the descriptions, absolutely, the way you wrote it, it's absolutely fantastic, because it really tore me apart.
Because I'm not writing a narrative. I'm presenting it as an interview. So I've taken my questions out, and you're getting the answers from them. And as you probably read, Anne really struggled to tell that bit. So just because everyone at home is really thinking, what are they on about? They bought the house I used to live in 1989, okay? Again, blissful beginnings. They wanted to settle down. It's not a big old haunted mansion. It's not an old church or anything like that. It's just your regular Welsh house. The townhouse you will see in Haverfordwest, in Milford Haven, in Carmarthen. You see them all throughout Wales, okay? And 2 up, 2 down kind of affair, okay?
Yeah, it's a terraced house, wasn't it?
It was terraced. And it was in the centre of Haverfordwest. So it's not in the middle of nowhere in a big creepy forest or in the middle of a graveyard or anything like that. It's just an ordinary, unassuming house, okay? And they started trying to control the garden. And when they were cutting down all the brambles and the thorns and stuff like that, the husband discovered, a big pile of bones. And it was all animal remains. And he was convinced that it was maybe a pet cemetery, or maybe there had been a veterinary surgery or something in the past, okay? So he kind of left it at that. And obviously upset his wife. And all of these things begin very small. They're almost like residual hauntings, where it's just things being played out, you know, cold spots, doors opening, creaking, things that can be honest, can be quite easily explained.
Yeah.
And then it kind of progressed to a more intelligent haunting. And Di woke up one night and he could hear a dog barking really, really loud. And it really upset him. He got up, where's this dog? He sounded like he was in the house. And he went outside expecting, thinking it was a neighbour's dog, or a dog had somehow got into his garden. And he thought he saw a shadow of a dog morph into a tree. And he was like, it was very peculiar. He found it very difficult to articulate the imagery he saw. And it's around this time that Anne started having very vivid dreams. Now, when I interview people, I want to know what their thought processes were, what their anxieties were, what their dreams were they having nightmares? Because I believe anything, whether it would be alien, demonic, dimensional, spirit, would also try and communicate with you on different levels, as opposed to, just like 2 knocks for yes, or a Ouija board or whatever. I think there'd be more layers into how things would communicate. So Anne had this very vivid dream, and she'd have a series of these dreams where she was in the house as it would have been in around 1900, around 1910. We can estimate, based on the descriptions of the house, because it was such a vivid dream, that it was between 1890 and about 1910. And she would be in the house as it was. It was a larger house because the next door was made into it. And she saw an old lady cooking in the kitchen. And she was sat. It was almost like she was remote viewing through someone else's vision. And on her lap, and again, apologies to anyone listening, I won't go into too much detail. But on her lap was a mutilated dying cat.
Yeah.
And it appeared that these people were cooking the neighborhood pets. Now, she also recalled that the windows were boarded up. So there's no record of anybody living in that house from 1890 to 1910. So one of the theories is that this family were living there illegally, right? Now, these visions would continue, these dreams, where there was elements of child cruelty, animal cruelty beyond, and incest, all going on under this roof. And it was particularly alarming. This woman had no paranormal experience prior to that. She wasn't a medium. She wasn't into the subject like, say, I am or you are. It was just a thing. She worked in a pub. Her husband was a lorry driver. And from there, it progressed then into such a surreal, vivid, terrifying haunting. Now, what the haunting does in the house is it drives a wedge between its occupants, okay? So it drove a wedge between me and my girlfriend, and after 3 months, I left. I was broken, I was an alcoholic, I was severely depressed, and it started working then on the couple.
Yeah.
And there was always a smell of perfume, and her husband broke her leg, and he was bound to sleeping downstairs on the sofa because the bathroom and the kitchen were downstairs. And she'd go to work and come back, and there'd be a reek of perfume in the bedroom, and the bed would be unmade. And she started thinking, I made that bed this morning. Why is the house smell of perfume? And her husband would be like, I haven't been upstairs. I can't smell anything. So she was convinced he was having an affair. So her mother was coming over, bringing lunch, seeing if he needed anything. So she was then convinced that her husband and her mother were having an affair. Plus, the phone kept going in the middle of the night. She was convinced she could hear her husband answering it. And she was convinced it was a drunk woman ringing up, like saying, oh, I'm going to reveal we're having an affair and all this kind of stuff. And one day, her husband, he had enough. He went off to stay with his brother for a short amount of time. And she smelt the perfume after she'd made the bed in the morning. And 2 minutes later, the bed was all in the corner of the room. And then she realized there was something much, much deeper going on. And then she's questioning herself then, thinking she's having a breakdown and she's responsible for all this. She's the one moving things. She's the one that's doing that. And that's what this particular entity does. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you think you're crazy, and it drives a wedge. So all of this stuff that's happening at this time is pretty run-of-the-mill haunting stuff, okay? And it then is kind of, there's so much, like every page you can open and there's just something you go, oh my God, that is really...
I know. Like, you don't have to tell me. It's a good
like,
book.
What's that about? Like she's in the bathroom and she thinks she sees a man with a dog's head in the mirror. And then the radios, all the electrical equipment isn't working.
And there's that horrible stench on Christmas Day.
The stench on Christmas Day, the footprints across the room, which her husband thought she had done. And they both kind of realized together there was something up, because in the corner there was a chair and the seat was compressed as if someone was sat there while they were arguing. And they just saw the seat like just rise where someone had been sat. And it was like, they described it, it was almost as if somebody was watching them having this argument. Someone was enjoying it. Someone was driving them apart. So I had an experience with an entity called the Angry Man, and he lived, this sounds really strange, he lived in my next door neighbour's house, and it was a 7-foot dark shadow of a man that was angry, hence the name the Angry Man. It'd be nice if he was called the Cuddle Man or the Ice Cream Man, and he'd give you nice stuff. And he acted very much like a poltergeist in that house. And we apparently had the ghosts of 2 children and an old lady. And we would see little shadows. This is my account now. So everything
This is in the same house as
this is the same house in the same book. Yeah. So I can't tell you what is right from wrong for everyone else. but I know what I saw.
And the neighbour's house, is that the other half of the house? Because you say it was a big house originally, but it got split into two smaller houses?
Spot on, exactly. So Anne was seeing the house as it was originally, and I lived in it when it was a smaller house. And we used to see small, a couple of feet tall, 3 feet, maybe 4 feet, like a smudge from the peripheral of your vision.
Yeah.
So we're watching TV on the sofa, and every night it would just get a little bit braver, walking ever so close. And I didn't say anything to my girlfriend at that time because she was terrified. Well, she wasn't terrified, she just wasn't into that kind of stuff. And one night, this thing walked in front of the TV, and she grabbed my arm, and she'd been seeing it as well. So there was a version of that called the Angry Man. And someone who lived in the house before us, who's not featured heavily in the book, they also said they saw the Angry Man when he came down the stairs and sat in a chair. And then you've got to start thinking, hang on, so we've got people in 1989 all the way up to 2002, all having very similar experiences, all different degrees of intensity.
Yeah.
And then research shows that 7 couples lived in that house in the same time, and only one of them didn't break up. So you start to think, what is going on? So one of the trappings of the first haunting was that the electrical equipment would fail. They'd have it replaced. They would turn themselves on and off. Things that are very typical in many hauntings, whether it's from film, TV, literature, or from personal experience. And the radio would communicate, even when it was unplugged, and they could hear children like singing a nursery rhyme. And they recorded so much, and they wrote so much down as well, which was great. And the song was sung along the lines, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was, who cut the sleeves off Grandad's vest? Baby's hit a chin on the windowsill. Go get the axe, right? And it just sounds like a nonsense song. But when I researched it, it was a song that was used in cartoons in the 1930s. It was very popular around 1905 to 1910 in America. But it turned out it was a vaudeville song from London, from the Victorian era. And it was just a nonsense song. So they were hearing this song sung by what they thought was children coming through the radio. And the husband was a very rational kind of guy. So what he thought was, well, it might be picking up, it's a radio. It's a transmitter, it's a receiver. Even though it's unplugged, there could be enough charge in the radio to pick stuff up. I've picked up, when I was younger, my radio used to pick up the local police station, taxi drivers, etc.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
I remember them days.
Yeah, you could actually on the FM band find your local police station, and you could hear all the calls out and stuff. So the husband worked very hard to rationalise it. Then one night he was downstairs on his own, and the phone rang, and he heard a voice say, "Go get the axe."
Oh.
And with that, he saw, and this bit gives me goosebumps because I'm sorry if I'm jumping back and forth between accounts, but that doesn't happen in the book. You get one full account, then the next account. But he had his first moment with the Angry Man, and he said from the kitchen, he said a black mass in the darkness just walked through the kitchen, and he heard it walking up the stairs and going upstairs and rummaging through drawers and walking around upstairs. And this guy, he can handle himself, even now, at the age, he's 55 to 60 now. He's a working guy, a strong guy.
He's still living in the house now?
No. They left. They left in 91.
They left.
Yeah, they never want to go there again. And he was so scared that he had a bed on the sofa. He was so scared, he literally just pulled the duvet over his head. He was that terrified of it. And he said, and I had my own experience in 2002. Now, me and my girlfriend were in bed, and we heard the window of our house get kicked in. We had a huge bang in the middle of the night. We jumped up. We're not Americans where we've got guns and baseball bats and stuff like that. You know yourself, Irene, what Pembrokeshire's like. It's a beautiful place in the middle of nowhere. It's not a huge population.
Yeah.
We're not renowned for crime.
Not really, no.
Not really. We get the odd things.
When I first moved here, right, from London, I picked up the newspaper, and the headlines was that somebody had broken into one of the charity shops in Carmarthen and stole the coat hangers. They'd left the clothes. They stole the coat hangers.
That's paranormal.
That is a crime down here.
That is so insane. That should be a book in itself. The coat hanging thing. That's insane. I've not heard of that.
And also they had a thing in the paper as well that somebody had lost their telephone. When they come out the nightclub, the police are looking for it or whatever. I don't know. And I couldn't believe it because I left London because there was a murder at the bottom of my street. And I thought, blow this, I ain't hanging around here anymore. So I left London.
I don't blame you, and you live in Haverfordshire, and as you said, the biggest crime is the tractors going so slow sometimes.
Yeah.
And
the cops with their speed cameras.
car crime. Touch wood, neither of us get murdered now by a new West Walian serial killer. So let's hope for that. So we hear the front window get smashed in. We hear very heavy feet, banging, clanging, drawers being opened, slammed, drawers, cupboards, things being knocked over, and someone run up the stairs. Now, all of this is happening in like 10 seconds. It's not happening over a long period of time. And something ran up the stairs and the door moved. And I ran and pushed myself against the door. I was in my boxer shorts. I don't have a gun. I'm a big fan of wrestling, but I'm not that good. And, at that stage, I was 5'6" and probably about 10 stone soaking wet. And the only thing I could think was get my girlfriend up through the skylight, because I thought there was things you heard about in London and the cities about people being robbed and tortured for PIN numbers and account details stuff like that. And it just all stopped. It all went quiet. The footsteps ran downstairs. There was a huge bang, and that was it. And I just thought, someone's heard that. The police are on the way. There must be neighbours calling the police, neighbours out on the street. Someone has to have heard this. So we waited a short bit of time, and I can just remember vividly my heart was just pounding in my head. And all I had was a mug. And I opened the door and I went downstairs, and it was the most terrifying thing ever, because you just expected a hand to grab you or you see a shadow. And I went downstairs and I turned on the light, and the house was intact. The window was intact. The doors were all locked from the inside. None of the windows had been forced. There was no entry into the house. The only thing that had happened was that all the CDs had been put in a spiral in the middle of the carpet, and a picture of my girlfriend and me had been put by the door. And she came down and she kicked the CDs and she fell in a heap and just started crying, because she said it was a message. Because 2 weeks before, we had been advised to bring in a medium. And she was going to cleanse the house, bless the house. And I'll be honest with you, things were so bad for us. If you had said to me, eat white dog poo, I would have eaten it. I would have done anything to make this stop, because our life was falling to bits. And this medium came and she said there was a vortex in the attic and we had bright lights in us and we could do this, we could do that. And we saged the house and things were quiet for about 2 weeks. And then it came back and it was like it was saying, how dare you?
Yeah, it comes back with a vengeance.
It is kind of like we pushed it into a corner and it came back even stronger and was like, do you know what? I'll show you what.
That's what they do.
Now, if we go back in time again, back to 1989, there's so many events that happened to those people. I could easily fill 10 hours of the show. So I'll just try and give you like the highlights. But when you read the book, it's all in context and you get more of the details and, it all makes a little bit more sense. They brought in a medium who was from Carmarthenshire. And she was a very old lady at the time. She was in her late 70s. She wasn't famous. She wasn't renowned as a medium who charged or did shows or anything like that, okay? All she would do would be to charge for expenses. And she had a very, very good record. She didn't have any family. She had a companion, which was a woman who's now in her 80s. And she was part of the spiritual movement, spiritual church, but she was a bit of a loner and she did her own thing. And she'd worked with the police and with the church. That's how good she was. And that's also how discreet she was. Nobody knew who this woman was. No one probably ever will. Now, she went to the house, and what happened at that house killed her. Now, she didn't die like straight away. She didn't just drop down dead. But what she saw that night at the house, she believed on her deathbed was responsible for her dying. and she was terrified. She said it had stripped her of all her gifts and abilities and had left her a broken husk of a woman, and she was terrified of dying. You know, this is a woman, you know, I don't know. I don't have any gifts or abilities, okay? You guys might do. I don't, okay? Maybe your listeners do. I don't. I'm just a guy. I'm a dyslexic guy, self-educated from Haverfordwest. Who's really into the paranormal and researching it and writing and all that kind of good stuff, okay? I don't see, like, you know, I can't communicate with dead people. But whatever this woman saw, it terrified her. And she had said that when she went to the house, you know, a woman who had dealt with demons and spirits and whatever you want to call them, she said whatever was in that house was beyond hell. These sound like Hollywood buzzwords to promote a new film, okay? They're not. These are her words. And she said whatever this thing was, God had not created it and the devil feared it. And she said it was not from the fabric of our reality. And she described it as incomprehensible. So this is a woman we could believe has seen demonic entities, paranormal entities, whatever. Whatever she saw in that house was something so prolifically different and so terrifying. She died not long after, broken and withered, with no abilities whatsoever. And she felt like, because she'd seen it, a part of her had gone towards it, and she was going, that was it. There was no heaven or hell or nothing for her after death. There was just this agony. Now, the best description she could give to this thing was that it was like a virus. It was like a mold that had seeped through into our reality and was feeding off our negativity. It could manifest itself into different forms to invoke fear, paranoia, distress, anxiety, depression. It would want to inhibit addictions, all the bad parts of ourself, all the bad parts of our personalities. It would feed off that. And whether it was through pure fear or confusion, and every person, it would affect differently. So I was very vulnerable. So I had my experience, whereas, say, for example, Mark might be stronger mentally, emotionally, more confident with his spirituality, things of that nature, and it would affect him in a different way. Yeah. And this is where it gets really berserk, and it's just a theory, guys. I can't prove it, so don't go mad. But it was like it was a dimensional being. It was not of our universe. It was not from our fabric of our reality. It was something that had seeped through and was ingesting the souls. It was feasting off the negativity of the people that lived there. It's a really difficult concept to kind of articulate.
Well, we've heard the story many different times before, and in our own experiences with researching the paranormal, dealing with these types of negative entities that just feed off of the negativity. And sometimes, and Irene, you can speak to it better than I can because I've never really encountered that myself. She has, though. And dealing with these types of entities, that there are some that are more like, I consider like parasites. They just feed off the energy, maybe not necessarily evil, but they'll create havoc or they'll create negative situations in order to feed, just like, a mosquito sucking your blood or any other type of parasite. But then there are these others that are more intelligent that do seem to just thrive on creating that type of havoc. I mean, Irene, what do you think? Do you have, in your experiences with dealing with some of these really nasty ones, do you think it's more like human spirits or other types?
No, they're not human at all. What you're trying to describe. Oh, there is no name for them as such. But they can't, they're like, they are like parasites, and there are all different versions of them. Like, we've got all different versions of animals. You've got animals are, animals are animals. There's neither good nor bad in animals. They kill to survive and everything like that. But with these things, there is levels of, evil with them. Levels of evil. That's the only way I can describe it.
Well, I think
I have dealt with them several times, and there is no getting rid of them. You can't destroy them, you see.
Well, it's like
You can't
energy
destroy them.
you can't be destroyed. It can only change form. And you know,
and like you're saying, I really do think they are from another dimension. They live, there is something, whether it's a dimensional lap over or whatever, and they get stuck here. I don't know. But they are not hauntings.
Yeah, well,
you just tried to interrupt, Mike. You said a word. You said something which is spot on, okay? And it's a word that comes up a lot, and that's parasitic. And it's like it's feeding off you. And think about attachments, okay? Say you came into proximity with one of these things. As you said, Irene, there's no name for them. I've done a lot of research which is presented in the books through ancient history, and they do crop up in, Egyptology, and, they do crop up, but there's no name for them. There's no pictures for them. There's no form. And again, something you said, which is spot on. Think about how diverse our life is, okay? We are different from, say, a squid. A squid is different from a cat. A cat is different from a mosquito, okay? And when we deal with the paranormal, not saying these things exist, I'm just saying we've got to be very open-minded about this. It doesn't disprove the fact that there could be angels, demons, aliens, Bigfoots, Yetis, spirits, anything, because
these are all man-made names anyway.
Yeah, there could be a whole spectrum of different influences and beings and entities out there. This one is a parasitic one, and imagine you come in proximity with it, and that's where you get your attachments from, okay? And this thing is on you, and it is feeding that anxiety, that depression, that suicidal tendency. And in the beginning of the book, I was very candid because I thought we're in a new world now. It's very good to talk about depression. But in 2013, I tried to kill myself. I was rock bottom. My career had hit the skids. My relationship hit the skids. I was an alcoholic. I was suffering severe depression. I had a breakdown. And I bounced back, and I live every day as if it's my last, and I want to encourage and inspire and motivate. And that's why I wrote Most Haunted House, was to try and come to terms with what happened there.
Yeah.
But think of these attachments, right? They envelop you like a parasite. They're feeding off your negativity, pushing that negativity. And then one day I could go for a cup of tea at, say, Mark's house, and this thing's like, hey, Mark's tastier than this guy, and it will drop off. And it was
you know the way I see him like a slime, a slob thing that kind of covers you, absolutely absorbs everything from you, and leaves you an empty shell.
Yeah, because think about, you see people when they're in the fits of depression, they look so ill, they're not sleeping, they're dependent. Think of all the people who commit suicide, and I'm not trying to say our suicide is due to a dimensional being. I'm just saying there is so much pressure in this world, so much depression, anxiety, and people feeling inept and low self-esteems. And hey, let's just look at the possible relationship between that and the paranormal, because it's very dangerous for us to say, oh, that guy isn't depressed, it's a paranormal entity. And then you start saging him and doing this and that, and you're feeding his fantasy. But at the same time, you tell that guy, he goes to the doctor and he starts giving him medication. That guy's zoned out of his head, making him more vulnerable and unable to resist what's happening to him. And it's such a fine line between knowing if this is real or if it's just something in the mind. Now, these things, they will drop off, as you said, they'll slither, they will skulk off, and they will sit like a spider.
It's like they live invisible in our atmosphere, and only certain people can see them.
Well, Rose, who was the psychic medium, she saw it. She could see it, and it killed her. Yeah. Now everyone else just feels its after effects.
And what you're actually seeing is not only the entity, not only the parasite, the being, but you're seeing the evil.
Because I don't even know.
You're seeing it in its full entirety.
Because I don't even know, and I explore this in the book. Is it evil? Like, as you said again, absolutely brilliant.
It's evil to us. It's evil to us. Yeah.
It's like
in its own world, it's not evil.
You have a cat. Is it a cat you have?
I have a cat, but she has dogs.
But you got a cat. Okay?
Oh no! For the ultimate evil, Pickles is
Pee-wee
the ultimate evil. Pickles, Pee-wee, the Pope parrot.
Say Pickles. Say your cat ate a mouse. Okay. the cat's not evil. It's just something it does. Okay.
Yeah,
and you'll you go, oh, look, it's brought a dead mouse, and I was, oh gosh, poor mouse, and off you go. You don't hate the cat for it. This thing has seeped through into our reality, and there's 7.7 billion lunches for it to feed and spread off, all of us. And this particular time, human beings are very, very, prone to having mental health issues. I don't think there's anyone on the planet at some stage hasn't suffered a doubt, an insecurity, a fear, a worry, mental health issues, some description, okay? So these things seep through. They can manifest, it's intelligent because it can manifest itself in different ways, interact with our reality, with the sole purpose of us getting to generate more fear, more self-doubt, more self-worth, etc. And
it can grow and separate.
Yeah, and it's no motive to it. There is no motive to it other than it. There's no agenda apart from it wants to feed. And there's no, we haven't got a magic gun that can shoot an interdimensional being that may or may not exist, because no scientist is going to give it the time of day and go, okay, I'll have a look just in case, because they're not going to do that. And how many homes, how many people, maybe people listening out here now, have had experiences where they were really happy, everything's going well, they moved house or they went somewhere different, and boom, their life fell apart. Yeah. We just got to have that notion that maybe, just maybe, it's not just demons and ghosts and aliens and yetis and Bigfoot, so maybe there's dimensional things seeping into our reality. And that's why I cover in the book as well. I've got a whole section of explanations from gas to cell phone towers or mobile towers, all the way to dimensional beings, spirits.
Mold. You had mold. Yeah, I read all
mold
that.
syndrome. And I think it's really handy for investigators. But what if, for you, Irene, if somebody said to you, I think this is happening to me. You obviously, you're gifted, you're knowledgeable, far more gifted than I am. What would you do? What would you try and do to help them?
Oh, I can't say. It depends on the situation. It literally depends on the situation, and I might not be able to help at all, and then again I might. You just don't know. You can only go there and feel it, see it for yourself. That's all you can do, and then take it from there. But these, like I said, these things can't be destroyed.
No.
And they do grow and they separate.
It's like a mold. It's like an intelligent mold or a virus.
Yeah, like a spore thing. Yeah. Like the way a mushroom spreads. Spores.
Yeah, like a fungus. It's spores. And I can't even begin to describe it.
But all it's doing is surviving. It's surviving in its own way. It needs that negativity. It needs those emotions to feed off of, so it's surviving. Same way as the cat with the mouse.
The only thing we could do is that we'd all have to be super positive and not fall victim or prone to negative thought processes, which is easier said than done in this.
Well, Mark could tell you, I have I don't allow anything at all to get to me. Nothing. I have this very, very positive attitude. Don't know. No, when I'm out doing this sort of thing, not when I'm with you.
See, actually, I think you just scare the living shite out of them. They say, "Oh my God, we've met our match."
I am so positive, it's unbelievable. Nothing.
Way to be. It's a good way to be.
Well, yeah, that's something I've always wondered, from a philosophical standpoint. I mean, what's the point? We don't understand why these things, the real nasty ones, why they do what they do. Is it specifically in order to create certain energy that it feeds off of? Because you mentioned earlier, and this is something that you hear in a lot of different stories of people dealing with a negative haunting case, it always starts off mild. Sometimes it even starts off a little playful, little things to lure you in, and then once you start giving it the attention it wants, then it starts building, then it starts creating the negativity and the fear and making you afraid and causing situations that really, whether it's manipulating your emotions, causing you to have depression or to fight with your partner or any of this stuff, and it just sits back and it's just like reveling in this stuff. I mean, I don't believe in evil per se. I just don't. Just like good itself is just a concept, just because somebody gives you a cookie doesn't automatically make them good. It could be Ted Bundy for all you know. But it's a human concept. And you mentioned also earlier something I've always said. When you look at nature, everything in nature, there is no good and evil. It just is. It's a humankind concept of good and evil. So that's why we look at people who are very religious, look at God as being all good. Well, then there must be the opposite, the Satan, who's all evil, and the devil and demons. And I just don't see that. I don't see it in nature. I don't see it in the universe. Now, that's not to say that there isn't things that could be particularly nasty, but the labels we place on them, I feel, are just so limiting.
Yeah.
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 And like I said earlier on, it's all man-made names, You've got to see this. You've got to see it inside your head. You've got to feel it. You've got to get into it. When you're up against something like this, you become part of it. Like you say, that woman, that medium, she felt that she left part of her behind with it. But this is what you do. You actually gel with it. You actually get into it. You see it for its full entirety, exactly what it is. You feel what it is. You use every emotion in your body, every sense in your body to get to this thing.
She could see the husks of people in the entity, in the thing. And she said they were like birthing more of the things. And that worries me because I lived there. Now, my material body, I'm not a particularly spiritual guy. That's something I'm going to look into in 2019. I feel drawn towards the positive side of spirituality, the positive side of existence, as opposed to being very much submerged in the nasty horror side of the paranormal. Like everything, there's a yin and a yang, there's a light and a dark side.
Yeah.
And I worry about, I was only in like part of this entity's grasp or whatever you want to call it for 3 months, and it had a profound effect on me for 10 years. Di and Anne lived there for 15 months, and they got out, their child was healthy, and there was no ill effects. But everyone who's lived there thinks, okay, we're alive, we've escaped it, we've all had this trauma. But hey, we're out of here. We're not going to go back to the house. Ha ha. Knock the house down. Do what you want with the house.
You haven't necessarily escaped it because it has taken part of your essence.
Yes.
And it holds that part. It holds it the same way as when I go up against anything. Every time I go up against something, part of me is left behind. Part of me sticks to it. It holds on to part of me. I might as well be walking around with a blooming big thing across the back of my head. Demons attract to demons. This one's,
What
I hate that word demons because demons is man-made. They are not fucking demons, people. They are not.
What I liked, I'm not a particularly religious guy. And as I said, it could be a poster on a Hollywood movie. And it was God did not create it and the devil feared it, So, we fear, when you think about what we can do, we can fly into space, create nuclear bombs, but there's things like viruses that terrify us because we're so small and they evolve so quickly and they spread so quickly.
You can't see them.
Can't see them.
Invisible.
They're invisible.
Very similar thing.
And they get into us really easy through touch, through our mouth, through our blood, through
even with a virus, if you're cured for it, there's still part of it in you. They take a blood sample, turn it into an injection to cure other people.
Exactly.
There you go.
And I count myself lucky. And big question I get asked all the time, and I ask it in the book of the people, the people involved as well. What about people who live there now? Now, the odd thing is about the house is that it's always, always empty now. It was for rent for ages, and then it's not even up for sale. It's just empty. And Anne told me, that's obviously not a real name, but Anne told me something which I have done as well. Whenever I saw a light in there, I did it twice, but she does it regularly. Whenever she sees a light on, she puts an envelope through the door. And it says in the letter, look, this is the strangest letter you're ever going to have, and I don't mean to worry you, but if there's strange things going on in this house, just get out now. And the house is always empty. Now, my plan is, it's a very bold, ambitious plan, and maybe people out there can help me. Maybe they know the right people. I would like to buy the house back, okay?
Yeah.
Anyone who's got a copy of the book, that is your key to the house. People like you and Mark who have supported me and helped me through this, you can come to the house and let it be open for scientific study. Because people say, oh, listen to you, Gav, you're going on, you believe in, what a load of rubbish. Guess what? If somebody came back to me and said everyone who's lived in that house had experiences because they were ingesting or breathing in a toxic mold, and we can prove that it makes you see ghosts and feel this, I'll take it. Because that explanation is better than the fact that maybe when I die, there's something horrendous that's going to absorb my very soul, my very essence. And I'm just going to live in an eternity of agony, worse than hell, if that is even possible. I'm quite happy to accept. For 10 years, I accepted that it was the mobile communication causing all of this, only to find out that this goes way back. And people are reading this book. It's really, really big. This book has really gone off the charts at the moment. It's been nominated for an award and it's doing really well. And there's so much gossip and chatter about it that I know that more people are going to come forward and say, hey, I lived in that house in 1980 or 1970. And it's like, how far does this thing go back? The key to this is finding out who those 4 people were at the turn of the century. The old man, the incest old lady, and the man and the children. Who were they? Did they invite it in? Were they the first victims? Now, there's one story from the book, one experience from the book, right? And it is awful. It is awful, right? And I'm going to tell like the PG version, okay? I'm going to tell the PG version for the...
Well, I bet that'd be bad enough.
Right. Can any of you remember when you were little, like your gran, your aunt, or your mum, when you'd say been eating chocolate or something, they'd lick a hanky or their thumb and they'd just...
Oh, yeah. I used to do that with my kids. They hated it.
They hated it because...
My mum used to do it to me.
The smell and taste of what I call granny spit. It's tea and breath, okay, right? Horrible, right? So Anne had been having...
I do not do it anymore.
Don't do it anymore. It's not nice. It's not nice. You've had a cup of tea and a fag and then you rub it down a little kid's face. It's horrible, okay? So Anna's having, all throughout the book, all throughout her time there, she's having these experiences where it's almost like she's traveling back in time or remote viewing. She even looked into the possibility that she was one of these people reincarnated. This account, it works on so many levels, from residual haunting to intelligent haunting to poltergeist, possible time travel, remote viewing, dimensional beings, demons. You can take out of it what you want. Someone even suggested maybe it was like aliens. It's like, oh my God, this is getting crazy. The only thing that wasn't mentioned was Bigfoot. So Anne keeps waking up with this horrible taste of granny spit in her mouth. So she's here brushing her teeth, drinking mint tea, eating, mouthwash, whatever, drinking mouthwash. And one night she had a very, very vivid dream, again, that she's back in the house as it was in the 1900s or the Victorian era. And the door opens and there was like this element of sleep paralysis where she couldn't move. And the door opened and this old lady that lived in the house, very old, very haggard, came in. And she was singing a song. And then there was 2 children just kind of peering on the landing, watching. And she undressed and got on top of Anne and started kissing her and rubbing her breasts in her face. And for all intents and purposes, Anne felt like she'd been mounted as if she'd been a man, as if this old woman was having sex with a man. Yeah. So her husband then, so Anne's in bed having this very horrible, vivid dream, dies downstairs. He hears creaking and moaning and groaning upstairs. He's not sure what's going on. So he hobbles upstairs and Anne is lying in bed as it is in the house.
It sounds like a succubus, doesn't it?
It sounds like a succubus and it sounds like the old hag syndrome. And on top of Anne, he could clearly see like a smoke, like a shadow. And when he woke her up, it went. And Anne came to and she realised then why she was getting a taste of granny spit in her mouth all these times. Because she also witnessed incest in the house as well between her and her son. So it's such a peculiar... I was on a radio show last night with an extreme skeptic, and he really, really put me through, he really, really roasted me on this, okay? And he was like, well, we're here to believe that, there's dimensional beings and hauntings and this and that. He said, you're making up fantasy, pure fantasy. And I said, I don't know what happened to Diana, and I wasn't there. What I've done is, with their permission, I've told their story. But what I can tell you is I lived in that house in 2002, and it's affected me negatively for 10 years.
Gavin, if he's never experienced anything like this, he's a very lucky man.
That's the way I look at it. And he said to me afterwards, off air, he said, can I give you a bit of advice? I said, of course, yeah, if people want to bash me, carry on. I don't care. It's up to you. I don't read the book. If you're not into ghosts, don't read book about ghosts, innit? He said, can I give you a bit of advice? I said, yes. He said, have you got any more of these books coming out? I said, yeah, I spent 3 years working with alien abductees. And he said, don't tell people it's true. Release it as a fictional horror. And I said, no, I'm happy to do that. He said,
but it's a true experience to you.
He said, I've never been abducted by aliens, but I've been interviewing people who have, who claim they have. And I said, but I'm quite happy doing this. And he said, you would make millions from films and series. And I said, I'm not here to make millions. I'm telling people's experiences of the paranormal. That's what I'm doing. I'm not, I've got a very good career. I haven't done this for profit or gain. If I could make enough money to buy the house back, I would. And I would let everyone stay at the house.
How much is the house selling for, do you know?
Don't know. When I bought it, it was 120 grand. And the estate agent never turned up. And the woman who's in the house was just on the sofa. And she couldn't even be bothered to show us around. And we walked around the house and we came back down. And my girlfriend was like, I love it. This is perfect. And my girlfriend said to the woman, how willing are you? How happy are you willing to drop it? And she said, if you take this off me now, I'll drop it to 105. And she dropped 15k like that. We viewed the house first week of August. We had the keys by the first week of September. It flew by. Everything just went through. And then we had it. And then it's just nobody can stay in that house for very long. Now, my ex, she was very skeptical about it and she didn't want to believe it. I left broken and heartbroken and, alcoholic and all these bad things. And she stayed in the house for a short amount of time. And me and her don't really talk anymore. We don't talk at all, if I'm honest. And one of the last communications I had from her was that she was terrified because she believed something had grabbed her foot in the night. And that was the last time she stayed at the house.
Yeah.
Now, what years again were you in the house?
I was there in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And then Di and Anne were there from 1989 to 91.
Now, the house itself, you say it's currently up for sale, or it's just
empty?
It's just
empty.
It's just an empty house.
Yeah.
So it's not up for sale. It's just abandoned.
Yeah, I walk past it quite often. Part of me doesn't know if I'd go in, but there's always a part of me, because a Channel 4, Irene and Channel 4 TV things, they wrote a letter and sent it to the house. They actually found out where it was, and they offered, a deal to do filming there, and it was turned down. Now, the interview I did last night with the skeptic, he said, well, why doesn't the current owner sell it to some scientists? Well, I don't know. Ask her, innit? I'm not allowed to get involved in that side of it. I'm sure if you, Mark, were, a millionaire and said to her, look, I'll give you $250,000 to just buy the house if you hand it over to me now, I'm sure she would. But for whatever reason, people come and go. There's a light in the window, a couple of weeks, the house is empty.
So she's more than likely tries to rent it out.
I couldn't even tell you for sure if she still owns it. Couldn't even tell you for sure, because we are the ghosts in this as well. We don't talk at all. Very sad.
Okay, so afterwards with Anne, she went through all this experience with the old hag and one thing or another. What happened after that? What was the next big thing?
That was kind of, she had a vision where she went back in time and saw that the children were being abused and the animal mutilation and the incest. And it was about this time she found out she was pregnant. And she just pleaded with Di, we need to go now. We cannot raise a child in this house. Because people say, why didn't they just leave? You can't just leave. You can't just get up
it's
and
not
go.
it's not that easy when you've got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
You've got nowhere to go, or at the age of whatever ages they were, late 20s, early 30s. You know, you don't want to just go back to your mum's spare bedroom with all your belongings. You know, you've invested all your money into it. You're tied into a mortgage. You put in your savings. You put everything into it. You invested in furniture, and it's not a case of just abandoning the house.
Yeah.
You know, you want to have storage for all your stuff, and they many times they just thought about just abandoning the house. Now, after I did all the interviews and put it all together, I went back and I went through it with them, and I said, you know, that's my take on it. You happy? And they signed off on it. And I said, I've got some questions for you now, okay? Because I said, these are the questions everyone's going to ask you. And they were things like, has anything happened in your new home? Have you had dreams? Have you had, did your daughter show any effects about it? You know, all these kind of things. I played them the song, and they got very angry with me when I played that. They said, never play that in this house ever again, in the new house. So I said to them, what would you do with a house? And Di said, I would knock it down and grind the rubble up into dust and just throw it into the sea, or whatever he said. And Anne said, you can't do that, because she said, if you break the house, that thing's not going to die. It's just going to find somewhere else to go.
Well, here's something else to consider, too. Is it the house or is it the land? Because there's so much. Sometimes there are things that are attached to certain locations, whether there's a house there or not. You can raze the house to the ground, burn it into cinders, tear it down, whatever. And then eventually, if somebody else builds another house on top of it, are they still going to be dealing with it? I've dealt with several cases where it seems like where there was activity not just in one house, but in several houses in a neighborhood, because it's the land, the location that had some type of nature spirit, elemental energy that was affecting people. So, and it looks, from what we've been able to tell, it looks like it's been there for hundreds of years. At the very least, maybe longer. So tearing down a house doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
Exactly, and I did as much research as I could into the actual area land, and there was nothing that I could turn up that was significantly linked to anything that was traumatic or anything of, you know, there wasn't even anything mildly important that it was noted that it could stem from that. And this could be something so ancient that goes so far back. You know, this thing might not die, it might just lurk, getting hungrier and hungrier. Like, if we talk about dimensional beings, okay, you know, it's a very new concept to us in, you know, like maybe the last 40, 50 years or so is something that we've started to think about. But dimensional rifts and tears, you know, the ancients talked about it. The Egyptians talked about this unknown entity that could absorb people, evil people. If you're evil, these things would come, these black things, and would absorb you. And I put that in the book. And there's nothing to say, this, you know, something I'm just thinking out loud now, because you've kind of like motivated my thought processes. But these things haven't been here for millions of years. You know, how do we know that? Maybe
well, that's what I'm saying. They're in the atmosphere.
Yeah, the dimensional rift could have always been here. You know, there's 7.7 billion of us, and
I'd like to know exactly where this house is. Because my house is built on a low line, and the activity in this house is absolutely fantastic, but it's not negative. Not yet. Touch wood.
Do you think possibly, just like, you know, just freestyling now, if there is a
the lights are just gone. The lights just dimmed then and went back on again.
Do you think possibly then that where there's a severely negative absorption, this thing feeding off us, do you think it's possible then that a massively positive element is also seeping through that for whatever reason is trying to protect us? Or
It could be. Who knows? I've got no idea on that, but who knows? All I know is I had people come in here to check ley lines, 10 years ago? And one said, the reason you're getting so much activity in this house, and it wasn't bad activity, it was good activity, you know? The reason is because it's on a negative ley line. She reckoned that she could turn it into a positive ley line, which I just let her get on and do her thing if it kept her happy. But it's not on as far as I'm concerned, it's not on a negative ley line. But there are energy lines. We know there are energy lines that crisscross this planet.
Yeah.
Right, left, and centre. Energy lines. Okay? Now, I was just sitting here thinking, there is so much activity in this house. This house is in the next county to your house. What if the ley line that goes through my house goes straight through that one? And where I'm getting good positive energy, by the time it's getting down there, it's turning somewhat negative. It would be interesting to find out. I'd like to get one of these maps. You know, what are these maps where you can draw straight lines and God knows what else?
They're called maps, dude.
Because there are many. Haverfordshire is built on several ley lines. The people who built the town were very aware of the ley lines, and it's something I don't dispute. I believe that the world has natural energy.
Well, this is it. All their monuments, you know, Stonehenge and the Tors and even burial grounds, they're all built on ley lines. You know, the ancients did know where these lines were, these energy lines.
And we kind of lost our ability as a whole to tune into these energies. They are there, of course they're there. There's energy energies and vibrations emit from everything. With this creature, with this entity, there's no name, because I asked Diane to give it a name and they couldn't. They just call it the entity, the darkness. Trying to understand its motives and comprehension would be like trying to explain to an ant why we use a microwave for a car. They don't have any regard for us. You know, the farmer doesn't go into a field full of cows or lambs and think, oh my God, what am I doing? I can't kill them. He brings them to market. He brings them to the abattoir because that's the purpose of those animals to him. And whatever this thing is, these things lurking within, just on the cusp of our reality, interfering, influencing our lives for the worst. We are nothing to them. We are just specks.
Well, we're fodder.
We're just fodder. We're just here to feast upon. And there's 7.7 billion of us, or 7.5 billion people. And it worries me. If this is true, as I said, anybody out there wants to say, do you know what, I've got a theory for this, and I can prove that it didn't happen, it was toxic mold, or it was chemicals, or hallucinogenics, I will take it. All I know is what happened to me in 2002. And it changed my life forever. It had a profound effect on me for the worst, and then for the massively positive, because I've created such a powerful, strong network of people. I'm making new friends all the time, people like you and Mark, people I can keep in touch with. And it's almost like safety in numbers. We can share knowledge. We can keep an eye out on each other. We can support each other.
And we can learn,
And we can learn from each other. And skeptics are going to be skeptics, no matter what. And without the skeptics, we need that balance. Otherwise, we would just be believing into theories and things like that. But whatever this thing is, we can't fight it. And the only thing we can do is run from it if we come into its grasp, and just hope that it hasn't attached to us so it can start again.
Very well spoken.
I was letting you guys go on there for a minute, because one of the other things I wanted to bring up is we talk a lot about this in terms of ghosts.
What about tulpas, Mark?
Well, there's tulpas as one, but I'm thinking more along the lines of take a good look at British folklore and history, and going throughout the whole British Isles. You have the pixies, the elves, gnomes, all these creatures throughout history and folklore, and that seem to be some kind of intelligent beings, whether they shift interdimensionally or whatnot, that we share this planet with. I mean, a great example is when I look at Iceland. You know, the Icelandic government takes their elves very seriously, to the point where they'll reroute a road going around where they think that they're living, in order to not disturb their habitat. And you hear stories about when humans come into the habitat, you have like the fairy raths, or you have or fairy rings, or other types of locations where these creatures live. And when mankind comes in and disturbs their territory, they fight back. And they could be very, very nasty.
It's like the church, Mark, the church is here, right? You go inside the churches, it's all religious Christian stuff. You look at the outside of the church, gargoyles and ugly stuff. Ugly things.
Yeah, which is supposed to, originally, I think, was supposed to scare them away. But yeah, it's, I think that, again, our language and our tendency to label things limits our understanding of what it is that we're dealing with. And this is why I go back to possibly the house being located on a land that maybe, we never thought it was anything very important, but maybe something lives there. And in living there, and we build a house on top of it, then it causes issues. That same location that I was mentioning that I investigated here in New Jersey, several homes in a neighborhood, because there was something on the land, I think was living on the land way before those houses were built. And of course it causes people problems, and sometimes these things cause issues to get the people to leave, to get the land back to itself. And again, that's just one possible explanation out of many, because we just honestly don't know.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. It's we think we know so much. Okay, we are incredible beings, human beings, and we do incredible things. And you open any astronomy book, and there'll always be a sentence along the lines of, "It's a mystery. Why there's a hexagonal storm on Saturn?" We think, scientists believe that this is caused by that. There is theories about dimensions, parallel universes. We use 10% of our brain, and what's the other 90%? And when you think about gifted people who have got the ability to communicate with the dead, see things, past lives, anything like that, what if they're tapping into a little bit more of the brain than everyone else? And we say, people, I don't even know how they can say this. And I'm sorry if anybody out there believes it, but we're alone in the universe, but there isn't sophisticated, intelligent life. We know so little.
Stupid. That is stupid to even think that we could be the only planet that has anything living on it.
And they say, I doubt they visited us. Look at us. We went on wooden ships and sails, and we conquered our planet. We sailed to New Zealand, we sailed to the Americas, South Americas, we explored the poles, okay? We're capable of such incredible things, but at the same time, can we actually be so sure of what we know? If you spoke to a man 100 years ago, he would be so sure that everything they had proven was right, okay?
Yeah.
But then all of that has been since unraveled, and we found new stuff, things that we didn't know about, things with quantum science, things, string theory, parallel universes, D-Ware computers and qubits, and all these amazing discoveries. And people are so quick to dismiss people who have any form of out of the ordinary event, whether it's seeing a UFO or having a ghostly experience or demonic experience or angelic, or it doesn't all have to be negative, but a strange occurrence. And the amount of people I speak to on a regular basis, and they go, "Oh, what, you're talking about ghosts?" And I go, "Yeah." "Well, I've never seen a ghost, but I remember this one time when my mum died, I thought she was sat at the end of the bed." "So what you're telling me is you think you might have seen the ghost of your mother?" "Yes." "So you have seen a ghost, possibly?" "Yes." And so many people, and you get all these surveys in American and British newspapers, surveys, 60% of people in the UK believe in ghosts. So like 48% of people in America believe that Bigfoot exists. 80% of people in this country believe that UFOs have visited this planet from another world. Yet, what are we so scared of it's control, it's power. Because if we can prove all of these things exist, our governments, our religions, our philosophies all start to crumble. And then we lose control. We lose control when we get 3-4, where people are just doing what they want to do. They start exploring other avenues, and we don't rely on the government systems, the political systems, the religious systems, the scientific institutes. And it's all part of the control. Now, I'm not saying everything is real. All I'm saying is, what if what I experienced wasn't psychological? It wasn't a Tetra mouse. What if I lived on a plot of land in a house that had a severe entity that made me, a very primitive creature compared to that, very ill? What if in 1989 to 1991, Di and Anne from Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire, what if that was real? I wasn't there, but what if it was real? Because to them
it was real. To you, it was real.
They have gained nothing from it. They don't want any money. They're not on This Morning. They're not in the newspapers. They're not in the radios. They have gained nothing apart from they feel like they have unburdened themselves.
This is what makes me think that this is more a genuine case than half of those cases out there where people are making money off of them. They are just elaborated. A lot of them are just elaborated. But this is, to me, this is a genuine case. I would have loved to have visited that house at that time.
There's still, hopefully one day. As I said, all I will say is, in terms of like pushing the book, if people want to read it, read it. If you don't, you don't. That's absolutely fine, okay? Yeah. And if I ever get to the financial position where I could own the house again, anyone who's got a book of Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire, that is your key. That is your key to go into the house. And whether we have to do a lottery or we have to do a draft or whatever reason, I want people to go into that house. And I want people like you, and I want people like Mark, and I want all the skeptics. I want as many people as possible to experience that house so we can all formulate an opinion. We can all do our research. I'm just one guy, and I can't even get access to the house. Di and Anne want answers. If I could turn around to Di and Anne and say, hey, guess what? There was something in the water there. We all were crazy. We were all tripping off our tits. We were seeing all kinds of stuff. They would accept that, because we would rather accept the rational explanation over the idea that a thing so powerful can distort our lives and to make us feel unbearable and ill and worthless and ill and leave us husks. We would rather have a rational explanation. And I really hope one day, Irene, that you can come to Haverfordshire and I'll say, come with me. And I'll say, there you go. I give you the key. You go in. I don't know if I could go in yet, but I said, there you go. Help yourself. That'd be good.
That would be good. But also, Gavin, you said like Haverfordwest, it's very, very, there's a lot of stuff goes on in Haverford. I'm getting Mark's disease now. Blah,
blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, blah.
Haverfordwest.
Yeah. Where was I? In the vicinity around this house, close to this house, besides the house next door, which was part of the original house, was there anything else happening? Was there any other sightings?
Great question. In my effort to prove it was the Tetra phone system, I was putting out feelers, putting stuff out on my website, on our Facebook pages, and I can't say all of these were true, but I had 16 reports of paranormal activity in 16 houses, all within a 1 mile radius of the house. Okay, so I was convinced then this was this thing, this Tetra, this mobile communication. And one of the things I saw, I've not actually spoken about this, and I don't know if I can, but a young lady who lived about 2 streets away from where I did at a later time showed me a video where she was Skyping her boyfriend, and this weird smoke thing wrapped itself around her arm on the video. And that was like, whoa. And that was like about 2 streets away. And I was like, well, that's not mobile phone communications. But I kind of stuck with the idea of the mobile phone communications because it made me
comfortable.
Made me feel comfortable, made me feel I hadn't gone mad.
Yeah.
And then when Di and Anne got in touch, all of that unravelled. And I think you get areas which are just clusters for hauntings and weird paranormal things. You know, you get places in America, watch channel, and there's one place I can't remember where it's called. They found like a bell-shaped UFO. It was something ridge. It was a forested area in America, something ridge, and people saw.
Oh, you know where, Mark? Surely, Mark.
Which forest?
I can't remember.
A place where a UFO was found, something ridge.
There was a Chestnut Ridge.
Yes, Chestnut Ridge.
Yeah.
And that area, they had a UFO crash or alleged crash. Then they had like a Bigfoot sighting. Then they had like ghosts on the road, and then they had some weird kind of cryptid kind of like sludge creatures. And it was like the Twilight Zone had been dropped in this one area. And you get like, maybe it's ley lines, maybe it's energies, maybe, who knows, maybe there's something already there trapped in it. But you get these areas, these clusters of hauntings or paranormal activity. And I think most old towns have that, Haverfordwest being one of them. Because you've got to think, it's a plague town. It was a Civil War town. In around 800 AD, there was a huge flood that flooded about 30-40% of Belgium. And the king at the time, I can't remember which king it was, said that the refugees, they could settle in West Wales and that they could start afresh. So all these poor people whose homes were flooded came to Haverfordwest, and they started new villages and new towns. And that's how the basis of Haverfordwest was built. It was built on refugees from Belgium. And then you had the Vikings, and then the amount of wars we've had. The Normans, you had the Normans, you had the Lafleurs. I can't remember all of them. My history. You had the Picts from Ireland, the Romans. You've had all this activity on this soil.
This all adds to emotional energy, emotional energy,
trauma, emotional energy.
Yeah.
All kinds of energy just deposited in one place.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But there was no sign that there was a plague burial ground there or anything at one time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Most of them are listed, though, aren't they?
Yes, there's two. There's definitely two in Haverfordwest, possibly more, but there wasn't one that I could find in that area. The only things I could find that had been before was an allotment where they grew veg. But then, as Mark said earlier, who knows what was there before? Who knows what happened? Maybe an atrocity happened there. Who knows? And how far back? We look at everything, we think, it's got to be something to do with people. Who knows what happened on that very spot of land 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago? Who knows what was happening there?
Yeah. It's like just giving the bird a grape before he starts screaming.
You have to feed the demon.
So yeah, it's a fascinating case for me, because I wrote The Most Haunted House as a cathartic exercise, went on to sell 60,000 copies, and just really catapulted the paranormalchronicles.com and all that good stuff. And it was really good for me because I started doing shows and meeting people and doing my own stuff. And then after that, I started my next project. I wanted to do on the very innocent notion that imaginary friends were spirits, possibly. And I put a general call out for people in the area who had stories about imaginary friends. And I went to visit one lady, and she was a lovely lady, and she was in her 40s. And she was telling me that she was a twin, and when she was a little girl, they had an imaginary friend called the Naughty Boy. And it sounded like it was a ghost. And he would bounce back and forth on their beds, and he would move stuff and get them in trouble with their mum. And they weren't particularly upset by the Naughty Boy. He was their friend. Now, I started talking to this lady, and I said to her, anything else, happened after? And then she dropped the bombshell that changed everything for me.
I know what you're going to say.
And she told me that she believed she'd been having sex, or sex acts performed on her by two very different spirits. And I felt terribly ill-equipped And she was such a lovely lady. I said, let's do this. We brought in a psychologist, and I spent an amount of time with her. And in 2014, I released Ghost Sex, The Violation. And it draws lots of comparisons to the Doris Biver case of Southern California, which most people remember as the movie The Entity, the movie starring Barbara Hershey.
Yeah.
But this was an ordinary woman living in Pembroke Dock in South Wales. And she believed she was the victim of paranormal sexual assault. It was a terrifying haunting, very, very different from the one from Most Haunted House and Haunted Horror of Haverfordshire. See, I can't even say my own book title now. And it was possibly the most disturbing thing I've ever had to process, and again had a severe psychological impact on me. Now, we did present in the book a ton of psychological issues that could cause this. There's sleep apnea, sexomnia, sleep paralysis, severe hormone changes in the menstrual cycle can cause hallucinogenic. There's evidence of things like that. So we went the whole hog. But the main basis of the book is this woman, in her own words, and it is in her own words. There is the most brutal and graphic depictions of abuse, sexual abuse you'll ever come across. And it's told in her own words. I haven't fluffed it up. She describes it as she talks. And it was very controversial. And it was the most controversial book of that summer. It sold about 6,000 copies in about 4 weeks. It made all the newspapers. There's still women coming out now, going on this morning, saying they married a ghost.
Yeah.
And I always get a little phone call then from a journalist or two saying, oh, I've got a comment. I was in the Sun newspaper in August doing a comment on the Ghost Sex, saying that I think we live in such a world now where it's so easy for hookups and online dating that we become disassociated from each other. There's so much pressure to be in a relationship. And I think that we create our own fantasies to make ourselves feel more important because maybe we've been jaded, maybe we can't find fulfilling relationships with, people online and things like that. But that was a terrifying case. And the thing that bothers me is, again, she didn't go to newspapers. She showed me photographs of it happening, which I have. And I've never been allowed to publish them because of his son.
How did she get the photographs?
Her boyfriend took pictures. She had a boyfriend, and he took pictures. And there's a very clear picture of her stood by the bed, and she's naked, and there's this light just wrapped around her, like a pinkish light, which can be replicated by, if you move cameras around and light sources. And then there's another one of it on the bed with this light on top of it. And her face is distorted. And I said, let's do this. And his son would not allow us to publish those pictures, even if we cropped their mum's face out or anything of that nature. And that was, again, so I don't know why I put myself through this. I do it because, A, it's good for people to be able to get things off their chest. And B, I grew up on a tradition of ghost stories, hauntings, and ghostly experiences. And part of me wants to keep that tradition alive. Whether people want to see them as fantasies or fables, or people want to see them that, behind every door of every house is the possibility that something paranormal, something very powerful exists. And it's just a little message of us all just to keep grounded and remember, rather than fighting each other, there might be things in this world far more dangerous than we could ever imagine.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. But another reason why I asked you about the ley lines was because I've had dimensional shifts in this house, time shifts.
Oh. Tell us if you can.
Oh, no. They've been mentioned so many times on this radio show.
I will get up for them. I will find them.
But there's, I get them wherever I go anyway, so it's not necessarily down to this house, because the first one I had, or one of the first ones I had, was in Crystal Palace, London. So maybe it's me, I don't know. It could well be me.
I like the theory about space, like, say, for example, this house I'm in now, it's been here for 100 years, okay? And that's a constant, but the time is different. So I could be sat here now and I see someone, a shadowy figure, walk through the room and walk through the wall. And then I do some research and find out there used to be a door there. And what's happened is 2 times have eclipsed each other in the same space. So that person is in their time minding their own business. And they're walking through the room thinking,
what they actually do, now Mark will explain this to me. Well, this is what I was talking to Mark about the other week. So you can explain this better, how they tip, Brian. Mark.
What part am I talking about here?
What I explained to you about dimensions, how they overlap, how they tip into one another, and like dominoes.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times we've discussed before that reality as we know it, time and space, it's all happening at once. Science is coming up more leaning towards that with theories like string theory, and if all time is actually happening at once, it's only our perception of time that it travels linearly. So with that time, or even you can look at it as either time or even space as dimensions, that certain things will bleed over into one another. Whether you have a time slip and you temporarily experience a past or even a future time, or you see somebody, you may think you're seeing a ghost, but you're seeing a live person. The same thing can happen of seeing other worlds and other dimensions. They just slip over. There's other theories of like multiple versions of our reality, every possible combination. It's all playing out at once, and sometimes that's where the Mandela effect comes in, where people will remember things differently because maybe we're switching these realities or timelines unknowingly, or they're bleeding over into themselves. So
they fall like a dominoes.
Yes. Yep. Domino effect.
I call it the domino effect because that's the way I was shown how it all happens.
I love the Mandela effect because if my girlfriend I said I was going to do something and I forget, I just say, oh, it was the Mandela effect. That was you were talking to me in another dimension, and this Gavin wasn't privy to that information, so I apologise. And she's like, she didn't know what to say then. She's like, I don't know if he's being serious or not, because she knows I'm really into my paranormal. She's like, is this real or shall I hit him? I don't know.
My wife just looks at me and goes, don't even try it.
Because it is conceivable with the time eclipse effect that you could haunt yourself. So if you've lived in the same space for a long time, you could hear someone in the middle of the night going to the bathroom and think it's a ghost or something paranormal. But it's just you from a week ago or 10 years ago. You could conceivably hear, if you've lived in a house you were brought up in, for example, you could hear a baby crying in the night. And that's you when you're a little baby in that house.
Yeah.
That goes along with a fairly recent experience that Irene had, waking up in the night and hearing loud footsteps going through the house, thinking
that's what I was telling you to tell him.
Yeah, I forgot about that exact portion.
My domino effect.
Yes, and what you were thinking if you heard, was it a ghost? Was it your ghost Herbert walking around, or was it you in another time, before or after? Past or future selves, just you or Brian or one of your kids stomping up and down the stairs. We just don't know. But we love to jump to conclusions, say, oh my God, it's a ghost and they're walking through. It's like, we have no way of knowing. We just don't. And yet we love to jump to those conclusions.
In 500 years' time, they will look at us now and laugh and say, oh, 500 years ago they believed in this, they believed in that, they were eating meat. They were doing this and doing that. The human race is studying 500 times. Think about how much we will have lived and how much we will have evolved and adapted our knowledge. And one day, science could prove that there is dimensional rifts, and that's why there's always been ghosts and demons and whatnot. And it's just part of our lives. It's just an accepted thing like gravity, or there's things there that we can't see. We don't. You see a plane take off. You sit in a plane and it takes off. And it shouldn't be able to happen, but it happens. You know, the fact that we are spinning on a huge planet, 25,000 miles across. That's something like 20,000 miles an hour. And the reason we're not all being flung into the wall and flung into space is because of a thing called gravity.
Yeah.
And 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, people would give these things names. You know, they thought the sun and the moon were gods. They thought stars were communicating.
That's it. They worshipped them, didn't they?
They worshipped them. You know, we've worshipped trees and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And 500 years' time to 1,000 years' time, we may have embraced the fact that ghosts are a slip in time. You know, it might be like people might celebrate it as, oh, yeah, it happened to me. Yeah, that means good fortune in your house if that happens. You know, or people record it saying, oh, my God, you're in tune with your ancients or your ancestors.
Well, you might be sitting down having a cup of tea with someone from another dimension.
Exactly. And when we go into space, and we find new worlds,
yeah,
the terrors and the possibilities we're going to find, and when we meet new races, they might say, yeah, your ghosts are basically just imprints, just recordings of people who lived before.
Yeah.
And it's done by this thing which we don't know about. And I think
I do think aliens come into this. I do think there is something from other planets that do come into the paranormal, the ghost side of the paranormal. I really do. How it fits, I don't know.
Maybe we're just all in some kind of program. We put into like some construct. Yeah, like an ant farm. Maybe this is, Anne Strieber, who was the wife of Whitley Strieber. She died and she came back to Whitley through communication and said that our planet was just a soul factory and that our sole purpose was to reproduce and die, and our souls would go off into the universe to populate other life forms and share knowledge, okay? Yeah. Maybe this is a prison planet. Maybe the aliens have put us here and all these things, ghosts and things, are just glitches in our programming, things we're not supposed to be seeing, which is just like the Matrix. You know, maybe we've been bred for one day the aliens are going to turn up and say, right, guys, we're fighting an intergalactic war. You're our frontline troops. You know, we don't really know enough about what we do. And when the skeptics say, oh, I rubbish believing in ghosts, more than half the planet believes in a god or a deity that no one's ever seen, no one's ever heard, that we're aware of. And they actively preach and pray and talk and communicate, you know, pray into a god. And that's fine. That's fine. But then when you say, I think I've got a ghost in my house, you're a nutter then. Oh, yeah. He's crazy. Yeah, he's a fantasist. I don't know. I'd love the answers, but sadly in my lifetime, I'm never going to know. And then I'll die. And if I can tell people that there's something after, I'll give it my best shot. But if not, it's just another part of the mystery.
Yeah, and it will remain so. Yeah. I don't think we'll ever know. Not in our lifetime, anyway.
I read a very scary article the other day. It was actually given to me by Jason Bland. When we die, okay, science is just what they've worked out. When we die, even though when we're pronounced dead because our heart stopped beating, our consciousness remains for a couple more seconds or minutes. And when our body is dead, our brain is still active. And that we're still picking up on, we're still hearing things, seeing things, feeling things, even though we're clinically dead.
Yeah, but that goes into people dying on hospital operation tables and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. You know, they're clinically dead, but they remember watching their life, them trying to bring them back from the dead, sort of thing.
How horrible would that be? Imagine lying there for like 4 or 5 minutes knowing you're dead. But you're still thinking. You're thinking, I'm not dead.
I'm up here.
I'm up here. Someone quick.
On the shelf.
I'm not dead yet.
Help me. Imagine, right, it was like your conscience remained for ages, and then they began the autopsy. And you're just lying there watching.
Oh, my God.
It's like, don't cut yet. No, don't.
I hope when I die, I am the victim of a very beautiful necrophiliac.
Mm.
Yeah, but then you can't feel it.
I can watch.
Yeah.
I watch it. Got dirty mind.
See, I always like to say when I die, I want to go peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like his passengers.
Yeah, terrible, you two. You're really bad.
Gallows humor.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of dark stuff tonight. Some very deep, dark stuff. We talked about suicide.
We can talk a lot more as well. We'll have to do this again. Because
anytime.
Yeah?
Anytime I'll come back, okay, because we haven't really touched on the ghost sex, and we've got all the great stuff that the Paranormal Chronicles magazine's got, all the little investigations of that. I can do a special treat on all the ghost stories of Haverfordwest, whatever, because you guys are amazing at what you do, and I love your show, and I love your listeners, and all the support you give me. And as I said, there's a brand new free e-magazine out there, no download, no subscription. It's the Paranormal Chronicles magazine. Just go to theparanormalchronicles.com. It's under magazine. Read it, enjoy it. If you want to contribute, anybody, you want to write an article or anything, just get in touch with me, because I'm not here to exploit everyone. I'm not here just to make money. I'm trying to give as much free knowledge back and support as many paranormal communities as I can.
I wish more people were like you. I really do.
I'm blessed. The books have done really well. So at least I can do is create a quarterly free magazine and give it out there. And it's a platform, because it's quite a clicky world. To get into paranormal journals, you've got to be someone, or you've got to be someone who's been on TV or something. And I just want to create a platform where anybody who's written a book or has got a theory or a topic they want to discuss can just write an article. And so far, it's been out just over a week, and over 1,050 people have read it. It also tells me the average time, and the average read time's half an hour, which means that people are really, really devouring this information. There's 125 pages. I'll be honest with you, some of the articles I had to read twice because they were such huge concepts by living in the matrix and consciousness. But as haunted chairs, the best ghost.
Now that will interest me a great deal. The matrix and consciousness side of it.
There's loads of stuff like that, and there's possibly the best ghost picture you will ever see, and it's in an article called Pete's Ghost. And anybody out there listening, Mark, Irene, have a look at that article. Get in touch with me, because if you've got any explanations on that ghost photograph, get in touch. It is possibly, if it's real, it's the best ghost picture ever. And if it's a hoax, it's the best hoax ever. But it's also one of the creepiest, most detailed ghost pictures you will ever see. And that's in the Paranormal Chronicles magazine on the paranormalchronicles.com, and the article is called Pete's Ghost. So check it out. Amazing photograph.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to download that tomorrow.
You don't even have to download it. You just go to the link and you can just read it on your PC or your phone.
Can you?
Yeah, you don't even have to download it. So you don't have to worry about viruses. I've made it as easy as possible. And the system is so clever, right? When you press left, the pages flip over. Like magic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, very nice.
Oh, that's good. That's lovely. Right, so for anybody that wants to buy your book.
Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is everywhere. It's on Amazon, Kindle, your local bookshops, Barnes & Noble, Hive, Waterstones, W.H. Smith's. It's everywhere. It's doing really, really well. People are really connected to it. The reviews have been stunning. Goodreads have given it over 4 stars average out of 45 reviews. America's really getting into it because it's different from anything you're going to read. It's written as an interview. There's so much more than what we've discussed tonight, and it's really creepy.
Like you say, it is really spooky, and I don't get spooked easy, boy. But I tell you, it is really. I get upset about animals. Of course, the animal part upset me, but there isn't a page in that book that doesn't grasp you.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, it grasps us for all the wrong reasons, because if this is true and that it isn't just easily explainable, this is probably happening in dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of households all on the planet Earth. And there's not a lot we can do. So I am very welcome to any suggestions. If anybody reads the book and you've got some ideas on what it could be, any thoughts, theories, maybe you've had your own experience, please get in touch with me. I'm not going to dismiss anything you say, even if you're hardcore skeptic and you say, well, I think it could be gas. and tell me it's going to be gas. And at the back of the book is loads of explanations as well.
Have you checked radiant gas?
Radon gas is in there because that was one of the things we had to check when we bought the house because that can seep through.
I hate to do this, but we've run out of time. We're running over here. So our guest tonight has been GL Davies. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on the program, and we're definitely going to have you back again.
Thank you both. You are both amazing. I will speak to you soon. I hope all the animals are good as well.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And Irene, where can we be heard?
Everywhere, people, just everywhere.
All right. Well, have a great night, everyone. Irene, I'll catch you next time.
All right, then. Night.
Bye-bye.